Okay, let's unpack this then. A match where defending felt, well, truly optional. Manchester United 4, AFC Bournemouth 4.
Hey, optional is a very kind way of putting it.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you, our listener, were looking for some calmness, a bit of tactical mastery, or maybe, a nice, neat 1-0 win.
Then Old Trafford on Monday night was absolutely not the place to be.
Not at all. It was instead a spectacular, completely unhinged display of offensive intent versus, well, defensive calamity.
It was football stripped right down to its most chaotic, elemental form, wasn't it? An absolute fireworks show of goals, individual errors, and these dizzying swings in momentum that left everyone watching feeling utterly knackered by the final whistle.
Completely.
For the neutral, it was probably the best game of the season. For anyone emotionally invested in that result, though, it must have been utterly exhausting.
Exactly. Our mission today is to cut through the noise of this 8-goal thriller, a result that feels less like a football match and, I don't know, more like a fever dream. We want to understand exactly what happened, why it happened, and most crucially, what this explosive draw means for Manchester United's season going forward. We're drawing heavily on the immediate reaction from match reports, the cold, hard statistics that underpin the chaos, and of course the highly polarized fan reaction that has just lit up the message boards.
And we have to start with the key, almost unforgivable narrative immediately, because this is what hurts United fans the most, and it really highlights the structural failure.
Go on.
They led not once, not twice, but 3 times against a Bournemouth side that arrived at Old Trafford winless in their last 6 Premier League matches. They scored 4 goals at home, and they still failed to take home the 3 points.
When you put it like that.
That fact alone tells you all you need to know about the structural fragility that unfolded on Monday night, December 15th, 2025.
Leading 3 times and drawing 4-4 at home. That requires some serious analysis. So let's start with the summary, the anatomy of this bonkers match.
The game was just defined by its breathtaking pace and these radical momentum shifts. Manchester United 4, AFC Bournemouth 4, as Simon Stone from the BBC called it, a Premier League classic and an extraordinary thriller.
Right. And United started blisteringly, didn't they? They seemed determined to put that recent poor home form behind them.
Oh, absolutely.
They showed a proper early statement of intent, registering 6 shots in the opening 10 minutes, which is their highest tally so quickly in a Premier League game in over 3 years, since late 2022.
It was relentless pressure, it really was, and it was quickly rewarded.
Yes, the tactical reward for Amorim's slight tweak came early on.
Amad Diallo. He headed home the opener in the 13th minute from close range. And it felt, for about 30 minutes, exactly like the comfortable home win everyone had expected.
But that's when the instability set in, didn't it?
Bournemouth managed to level things through Antoine Semenyo at the 40-minute mark. And it just felt like a gut punch, considering United's overall dominance of possession and territory up to that point.
But the narrative kept swinging back and forth. Crucially, United hit back quickly, restoring the lead just before the break.
Casemiro scored deep into first-half stoppage time, 45 minutes plus 4 from a Bruno Fernandes corner/cross.
Though we have to pause here and note, the reports do suggest that the Bournemouth keeper, Georgi Petrovic, made a proper mess of it.
Oh, he really did. Fumbled Casemiro's rather tame header into his own net. So, halftime, 2-1 United. They had the lead, but you could already see the defensive cracks appearing.
And the second half? Well, that was where the wheels didn't just come off.
They completely detonated. That now infamous 7-minute collapse, a real recurring nightmare for United this season that the gaffer, Ruben Amorim, referenced as being similar to the lapse against Nottingham Forest earlier in the campaign.
We're talking about catastrophic defensive breakdown here.
Completely. Evan Elson scored in the 46th minute, less than 60 seconds after the restart.
And then Marcus Tavernier scored from a free kick just 6 minutes later in the 52nd minute.
And suddenly, it was 3-2 to the Cherries. Old Trafford went from, enthusiastic anticipation to this stunned, terrified silence in the blink of an eye. You could just feel the pressure on those young defenders.
Yet the one thing you cannot fault this United side for is their fight, even when facing that kind of internal structural collapse.
No, you can't. They managed the second reversal of the game in just 2 astonishing minutes.
Bruno Fernandes smashed home a brilliant free kick equalizer in the 77th minute.
Followed immediately by Matheus Cunha scoring in the 79th minute.
It was 4-3, United had the lead back, and the stadium was absolutely rocking with relief and adrenaline.
And that, conventionally, should have been the end of the story. You score 4 goals at home, you win the game. Simple.
But football, and especially this iteration of Manchester United, is anything but conventional.
Tell me about it. 19-year-old Eli Jr. Krupi had the final, decisive flourish for the visitors, scoring the equalizer in the 84th minute to make it 4-4.
And the drama didn't even end there, did it?
Not even close. Bournemouth continued to press that exposed United defense, and it took some sensational work from the goalkeeper Senan Lamens. He had to pull off a couple of crucial reaction saves from David Brooks deep into stoppage time just to ensure United kept hold of that single point.
The fact that after scoring 4 goals, they were fighting simply to avoid defeat.
It tells you everything, doesn't it?
It really does. Now, let's move past the narrative and look at the raw statistics, because this is where the story of attacking dominance meeting defensive horror is laid bare for us.
Right.
We had 38 combined shots in this match, 25 for United, 14 for Bournemouth, a massive volume of attempts.
And here is where it gets really interesting for those deep diving into the game's quality. We have to talk about expected goals, or XG.
Okay, for those who might not follow the metric every week, just give us a quick rundown.
Sure. XG is simply a statistical measure that assesses the quality of a scoring chance. It determines the probability of a shot resulting in a goal based on, historical data from thousands of similar shots, where it was taken, what part of the body was used, whether it was assisted, that kind of thing.
Got it. So what did the XG tell us about this chaotic 8-goal match?
United's expected goals was a massive 3.29.
Wow.
Bournemouth's was significantly lower at just 1.86. So United created over a goal and a half's worth of chances, more than the visitors.
Which means on an average day, United should have won that game comfortably. 3-2, maybe 4-2.
Exactly. The fact they ended up with the same result means one of two things. Either United were monumentally poor in their finishing of high-quality chances, or Bournemouth were unbelievably clinical with their fewer chances. Or, and this is the Amorim debate in miniature United's defending, was so core that the chances Bournemouth created were so easy that they basically became guaranteed goals, skewing the XG metric in their favor.
I think we have to pursue both avenues simultaneously, don't we?
We have to.
Because the truly bizarre statistical detail is that both teams finished the game with exactly 9 shots on target each.
9 out of 25 for United and 9 out of 14 for Bournemouth. That 64% accuracy rate for Bournemouth is just staggering clinicality.
It is. It's hard to reconcile the fact that United created more total chances and far higher quality chances, yet were matched shot for shot on target.
It absolutely points to Mbeumo's wasted opportunities, which I'm sure we'll get into later, as they were high XG chances that simply were not finished.
Right.
But it also points to the ease with which Bournemouth broke through that United midfield and defense, allowing shots to be taken from really dangerous central positions. Chances that didn't require much effort to put on target.
It speaks volumes about the vulnerability. And speaking of vulnerability, we must highlight a truly damning historical footnote from this match. This 4-4 draw cemented a remarkable, almost unbelievable statistic for Bournemouth. They are now the first top-flight side in English football history to score 3 or more goals in 3 successive away games at Manchester United.
Let that sink in for a moment. They previously won 3-0 on their last 2 visits.
So in their last 3 league trips to Old Trafford, Bournemouth have scored 10 goals.
10. This is the side, let's remember, that is generally battling relegation. That fact, for the United faithful, must be absolutely galling. It suggests that Old Trafford, the supposed fortress, now lacks the structural or psychological barrier necessary to stop mid-table sides from coming and just attacking freely.
That's a huge shift in the psychological narrative around the club. It tells you the fear factor has completely evaporated and opponents smell blood when they arrive at the Theater of Dreams.
They absolutely do.
So after that bonkers result, how did the two gaffers react? We have quotes from both Ruben Amorim and Andoni Iraola, and their analysis offers a real contrast, even though both acknowledge the defending was borderline farcical.
Amorim, understandably, was frustrated. Though he tried to remain pragmatic and analytical, his core feeling was clear. The result was really disappointing, and that we should have won the 3 points.
Of course.
What's fascinating here is his analysis of when the points were lost. He argued, it might look like we lost the 2 points in the second half, but I think we lost them in the first half.
That's a powerful statement. Why the first half when they're leaning 2-1?
Because of that clinicality issue we just discussed. He felt they dominated and created so many chances that they had to go to halftime with a different result.
And the stats back him up.
Overwhelmingly. United produced the second highest non-penalty XG value, that's expected goals excluding penalties, which can often inflate the metric of any side in the Premier League this season in that first 45 minutes alone.
Blimey.
Amorim's argument is that if they had converted even two of Mbeumo's chances and been 3 or 4-0 up, the defensive lapses in the second half wouldn't have mattered. The game would have been killed.
So he's pointing the finger squarely at the forward line for poor execution rather than the defense for structural collapse.
That's his primary line of defense, yes, but he can't ignore the systemic nature of the failure. They still suffered that critical 6-minute lapse right after the break, reminiscent of the Nottingham Forest game. He had to admit they lost the concentration, which allowed Bournemouth to score those 2 quick goals to flip the scoreline to 3-2.
And he's clearly focused on the psychological element, what he calls the details.
Precisely. He insists the defensive issues aren't about his tactical system. It's not because it's back 4, back 3, back 5, but about closing out games.
Right.
He was even criticizing the team's throw-in possession just before Krupi's final equalizer, showing his absolute focus on those tiny, crucial late moments of concentration that often define professional football.
So the gaffer feels the players are mentally switching off when the game is supposedly controlled.
That's his take.
But I have to challenge that point because the formation did change, didn't it? Which somewhat undercuts his "it's not about the system" point, especially as Amorim has been notorious for sticking so rigidly to his 3-4-2-1 formation.
That's a fair challenge, yes.
He was forced to make a tweak to generate the required attacking output.
And it's a huge point that got lost in the noise of the goals. Amorim did tweak his favored 5-man defense, a back 3 that often drops into a back 5 at the start of this match. The tactical shift involved pushing Amad Diallo into a much more advanced position, essentially giving him a free role on the right flank, almost abandoning his defensive duties.
And it was immediately rewarded with Diallo's opening goal. That suggests attacking freedom, but at what cost?
It suggests that to unlock United's attacking potential, Amorim felt compelled to sacrifice defensive security. By pushing Diallo higher, the space between the right-sided center back and the right wing back became enormous. This fluidity, while producing the first goal, inherently introduced systemic risk. We saw the defense become more exposed, with the young center backs constantly having to cover massive areas in the channels.
And the disorganization seemed to amplify throughout the second half. When the veteran defender Lisandro Martinez came on later in the game around the 69th minute, Diogo Dalot shifted to right back.
Which just indicates a constant state of flux and uncertainty in the defensive third.
It looked reactive, not planned. And that's a recipe for disaster when you're clinging to a 4-3 lead against a fast counter-attacking side.
Now contrast that high-stress environment with Andoni Iraola's view. The Bournemouth gaffer sounded almost delighted.
As you would be.
He admitted the truth bluntly. It was 2 teams that attacked much better than we defended. He called it entertaining for everyone, and said his players had provided a wonderful spectacle for the neutral.
A genuine neutral's delight, absolutely. Iraola was pleased to take the point, though he did acknowledge they struggled massively in the first 15-20 minutes under that initial United onslaught.
He also took the time to highlight the performance of his goalkeeper, Sanny Lamens, who made 2 massive saves at the death to prevent United snatching a victory.
And that shows how quickly a draw could have become a loss for Bournemouth had Lamens not intervened.
Exactly. But interestingly, Iraola had a clear point of grievance regarding the officials. He claimed the handball decision leading to United's free kick goal, the one Bruno Fernandes scored in the 77th minute, was a clear mistake.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he argued the ball hit above the traditional T-shirt line where the armband sits, and therefore shouldn't have been penalized.
It speaks to the utter chaos of the match when the gaffers are debating not just their own tactical failings, but specific marginal refereeing decisions that could have decided the point.
It was marginal, but Fernandes capitalized with brilliance.
Finally, let's bring in the external pundit verdict, because they were queuing up to offer their thoughts.
Of course they were.
Jamie Carragher declared it the best game of the Premier League season so far, praising the attacking efforts of both sides. He seemed to appreciate the sheer, thrilling lack of defensive concern.
But Gary Neville, looking at it through United eyes, called it absolute madness, while pointing out the critical structural failing under Amorim. He noted the team has now dropped 7 points from their last 3 home games alone, against Everton, West Ham, and now Bournemouth.
That is a staggering return from 3 highly winnable home fixtures. If you want a challenge for Europe, let alone the title, You cannot afford to drop points consistently at home against teams outside the top six.
No chance.
That home form woe suggests a really deep-seated vulnerability.
It really does. And when a club like Manchester United drops points like this, leading 3 times, scoring 4 goals but only getting a draw, the fan base doesn't just react, it fractures.
It explodes.
It really does. We've seen the Reddit threads and fan forums, and they perfectly illustrate this stark contrast in fan feeling, split right down the middle between those who see progress and those demanding immediate standards.
Right, so you have the enthusiastic positives often framing themselves as the entertainers.
Yeah. Fans like Sean and Kent were proud of the energy and flair, saying it felt like an old United game once more, the 4-3s, the 5-3s, and showed improvement in fight.
And they highlight that the team fought back after going 3-2 down, something the Manchester United of last season would not have done, suggesting a genuine psychological resilience has been instilled.
And there's a real sense of trying to find the humor in the chaos, acknowledging the sheer entertainment value. One poster, Room for Disease 2, insisted that if you can't see that the attacking football has improved, you're deliberately ignoring reality, even if the defensive structure isn't perfect.
It's a fair point.
They accept that a team which finished 15th last season won't magically become a title contender in 16 games. They believe the high goal count is a necessary, messy step toward the required offensive identity.
But then you get the furious, angry negatives who are banging the standards drum.
Loudly.
For them, this was an absolute shambles, an embarrassing result, and one fan even suggested that the standards are currently at the Earth's outer core.
Ouch.
They simply cannot reconcile scoring 4 at home and drawing with a team like Bournemouth, who were winless in their last 6 going into the match. The sense of institutional failure just outweighs the attacking thrills for them.
They are also quick to point out the damaging cost of the home form woes. 2 points from the last 3 home games against Everton, West Ham, and Bournemouth. One fan noted, somewhat darkly, that the opposition now just needs to hang in there, wait for the inevitable defensive lapse, and Old Trafford will quieten down, suggesting the atmosphere now works against the home side due to a fear of collapse.
And this internal struggle immediately fuels the Amorim in-out debate, which is raging hot right now.
Of course.
The Amorim out camp argues the problems are deep-seated structural issues that begin and end with the gaffer. They blame the defensive frailties. And despite Amorim's protests, the persistence of the back 3-5 system, which they claim does not work because it requires a tactical precision the players simply don't possess.
And they cite some pretty damning statistics to prove their point. Under Amorim, United have conceded a shocking 68 goals in just 43 Premier League games.
68.
68. And they have managed only 1 single clean sheet this entire season.
Wow.
One fan, Yazur, points out the system consistently leaves United exposed, resulting in what he calls 3-on-3 consistently at the back whenever the wingbacks push up. The poor defensive record is a colossal weight hanging over the manager's head.
That leads me to a critical analytical point, which I need your take on. If Amorim says it's not about the system, how do we reconcile that with the fact that his team has the second highest non-penalty XG this season, yet they still concede those 3-on-3 opportunities consistently? Doesn't that suggest the system itself is structurally volatile, built to overcommit an attack at the expense of defensive stability?
It absolutely suggests structural volatility. The system relies on a relentless offensive pressure and clinical finishing to negate the defensive risk. When the finishing fails, as it did spectacularly for Mbeumo, the high risk of the system is exposed.
Right.
And the Amorim in camp counters these structural critiques by pointing the finger squarely at the players, arguing the problem is mentally weak players missing those decisive sitters.
They highlight the undeniable offensive improvement. United have scored the second most goals in the league this season, tied with Manchester City. The gaffer has clearly revolutionized the attack.
Moreover, they stress that the injury crisis missing leaders like Delic to Maguire is forcing 2 very young defenders, Heaven and Yoro, into the starting lineup, which automatically invites defensive vulnerability.
That's a huge piece of context.
It is. The argument from the in-camp is that Amorim has progressed the team massively from that 15th place finish last season, and sacking him now, when the attack is humming, would be a catastrophic mistake, plunging the club back into managerial chaos.
So it's the classic footballing dichotomy. Is it the system or the personnel? The sheer quantity of goals scored suggests the attack is working, but the high number of goals conceded suggests the defensive structure, regardless of the shape, is fundamentally unstable.
particularly when missing key defensive leaders and an experienced central midfield anchor.
The 4-4 result is the perfect encapsulation of that dilemma.
It really is.
So let's turn our attention to the individuals, because this game was an absolute showcase of individual brilliance and horrifying individual errors at both ends of the pitch. Starting with the attackers, there were undeniable bright spots, chief among them, Bruno Fernandes.
Bruno Fernandes, again, was central to everything good that United created, although he remains a highly divisive figure among the fans regarding his overall game management. Well, statistically, he's irreplaceable. He has been directly involved in 12 goals this season, 5 goals, 7 assists, and has created more chances than anyone else in the Premier League.
Kick and this corner delivery led to Casemiro's goal. He provides those moments of genius.
He does, yet the critique persists among a large segment of the fan base. He ruins a lot of our play with poor passing choices and rash decisions, especially when rushing the final ball.
It's the classic low risk, low reward versus high risk, high reward dichotomy.
Exactly. One fan noted that his constant quest for the risky, game-breaking pass often kills simple, structured counterattacking opportunities, which only adds to the chaos that Amorim's trying to minimize.
Then we have Matheus Cunha, who scored United's 4th goal. He attempted 8 shots in the game, which is the highest total for any United player this season.
And he was universally praised for being intelligent and having direct runs that significantly improved United's forward momentum, especially when he shifted centrally. The fans feel Cunha is hitting a consistent stride, and they desperately hope this goal will be a confidence boost for him to maintain this form, especially with the upcoming forward departures.
And Amad Diallo. He was Amorim's immediate reward for that tactical tweak, scoring the opener. He was praised for his energy and work on the right side, causing problems for Bournemouth early on.
But the critique on him is developmental. He was noted for physically trailing off in the second half, and he still needs that decisive end product to consistently match his exciting dribbling ability.
Right. He can beat 2 men, but the final pass or shot still needs refinement.
Precisely. Now, we have to address the elephant in the room that links directly back to that massive 3.29 XG number, Mbeumo.
Oh, dear.
He became the central point of fan frustration, and honestly, the word frustrating might be an understatement when talking about his finishing.
He was widely accused of missing 3 clear-cut opportunities, 3 open goals or sitters, that should have put the game completely beyond doubt in that first half.
Fans noted his form has dipped a bit, and he looks utterly panicked in front of goal right now. We break down those chances. They were all in high-probability positions.
Yeah.
A close-range header that went over, a one-on-one rushed wide, and a snapshot from inside the 6-yard box that was blocked. These moments are exactly what contribute to that 3.29 XG figure.
If Mbeumo finishes even 1 or 2 of those, Amorim's tactical defensive issues become moot.
Exactly. The feeling is so strong that some fans suggested the upcoming AFCON break, that's the Africa Cup of Nations, for our listeners who may not follow international tournaments, might actually be a blessing for him.
A forced reset.
A forced 6-week break to reset his focus, given how severely his confidence has dipped recently. It highlights that fundamental problem Amorim flagged. Poor finishing exacerbates the defensive issues, but the pressure on the defense is only going to intensify if the forwards continually miss these high-quality chances.
And speaking of pressure, let's talk about the defensive nightmares. This is where the injury crisis truly hit home. The team is missing key experience with established defenders, De Ligt and Maguire, unavailable, forcing 2 very young defenders, 20-year-old Aiden Heaven and 19-year-old Lenny Yoro, to anchor the defense.
And their inexperience was painfully apparent and heavily criticized in the fan threads. Heaven, in particular, was called out for woeful defending, horrendous positioning, and being far too passive, especially on Bournemouth's first goal.
Right, where he continued to back off the attacker instead of closing the space.
He just gave Semenyo far too much time and comfort.
Yoro, his partner, was criticized for exhibiting 0 situational awareness and constantly switching off. One fan described their partnership as nightmare fuel because of the consistent lack of communication and positional discipline.
Which is essential in a back 3 or back 5 system.
Absolutely, and even the experience that came on couldn't stem the tide. Lisandro Martinez, fresh back from injury, was immediately criticized by some fans for lazy defending and adding to the chaos for the goals conceded after his arrival.
The defensive unit just lacks cohesion and confidence, and that's a deep-seated structural issue.
But the root of the defensive problem, according to overwhelming fan consensus, lies just in front of the back line. in that massive midfield hole.
There was a consensus that the midfield was non-existent, and there was a massive gaping hole in front of the young defense.
If we use an analogy, imagine the defense as a castle wall. Casemiro is supposed to be the last line of defense before the wall, the veteran commander shielding the entry.
A good analogy.
Hmm.
But the midfield hole means there are no scouts, no skirmishers, and no central protection in front of him, allowing the enemy Bournemouth to charge directly at the heart of the defense unimpeded.
This left Casemiro completely exposed, run ragged by the pace of Bournemouth's attacks. His eventual 50th minute yellow card, which rules him out of the next game,
Was the direct result of having to make a tactical foul because he had absolutely no shield in front of him.
he was the last man, forced to cynically stop a clear attack.
One fan noted that the build-up to that booking saw Bournemouth literally run straight through both Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes, highlighting the catastrophic vulnerability of that central spine when it is exposed and unsupported.
The lack of positional discipline in central midfield is perhaps the biggest analytical takeaway from the 4-4 draw.
I think you're right.
So what does this chaotic draw actually mean for Manchester United's season? The immediate cost is clear. They missed a massive opportunity to climb the league table and solidify their European aspirations.
Absolutely. The result cost United a top 5 spot. They remain in 6th place, tied on 26 points with 3 other teams, Liverpool, Sunderland, and Crystal Palace.
And here's the frightening context. While they are only 2 points off 4th place Chelsea,
They're also just 6 points off 15th place Brighton. The middle third of the table is incredibly bunched.
so this intense mid-table competition means that every dropped point feels amplified.
Especially when it's dropped at home to struggling opposition. They're dangerously close to being swallowed by the pack.
And the cost of this particular game extends immediately to the next pivotal fixture due to the suspension of Casemiro. His 50th minute booking, his 5th yellow of the season, means he is suspended for the next Premier League game against Aston Villa.
That is a critical blow. Villa are flying high, sitting comfortably in 3rd place, playing superb football under their gaffer.
Facing them away from home is already a monumental task.
And losing Casemiro, the only true defensive shield they have, despite his recent drop in form and age concerns, leaves a gigantic gaping hole in the starting XCA. The question now is tactical. Who replaces him and how does that change the whole setup?
The primary candidates would be Kobbie Mainoo or perhaps Scott McTominay, but neither offers the same kind of positional discipline required to shield that young defense against an attacking force like Villa.
Exactly. If Manu steps in as the deepest midfielder, he's burdened with a responsibility that his age and preferred style of play aren't suited for.
And McTominay.
If McTominay plays, he offers energy and goal threat, but his positional awareness is inconsistent, and he's often better used driving forward than sitting deep and protecting the back 4 or back 3, depending on Amorim's mood. This single absence forces a complete rethink of the spine of the team for the toughest away fixture on the immediate calendar.
Compounding this problem are the upcoming Africa Cup of Nations departures. The team is set to lose key attackers, Amad Diallo, who scored the opener, and the frustrating but prolific Brian Mbeumo to AFCON for potentially 6 weeks, starting in early January.
It forces an immediate question about where the goals and, specifically, the attacking width will come from in the new year. Diallo provides crucial threat on the right, and despite his finishing woes, Mbeumo is one of their most consistent goal scorers and penalty takers. As one fan noted, the team is only going to get weaker for the next few matches, especially with a tough run of games coming up against Villa and then the busy festive period.
The substitutes who came on late in the Bournemouth game, Xerxes and Sesko, they need to step up massively and quickly to replace that lost attacking output.
But relying on fringe players and youth to carry the load through a tough winter schedule rarely yields consistent results.
Which immediately leads us to the January transfer talk. Given the glaring midfield hole and defensive frailties that the 4-4 draw brutally exposed, what is the overwhelming fan consensus on the priority for the transfer window?
It is absolute overwhelming consensus. A defensive midfielder, or DM, is the absolute priority for the January window.
And we need to be clear about the profile. Fans want someone who can control the game, who can cover ground quickly, and crucially, shield the young defense with positional discipline.
There is palpable fear that without a significant experienced midfield purchase, the team is destined to slide out of the European spots. They look at other clubs strengthening and realize United risks stagnation.
Some fans bitterly lament the missed opportunity to sign a player like Manuel Ugarte in the summer, who they feel would have been the perfect, robust Casemiro replacement.
Someone capable of controlling and shielding the defense without demanding the attacking freedom Bruno Fernandes requires.
But money seems tight, judging by the overall sentiment. One fan, claiming to be an accountant, reviewed the balance sheet and stated they don't see significant January investment without outflows, meaning selling players first.
Which raises concerns that the management won't back Amorim with the necessary funds to fix this critical structural weakness. And that is a terrifying prospect for the Amorim in camp.
Finally, let's talk about Manu, who came on for Casemiro in the 61st minute. His role is heavily debated because his talent is just so undeniable.
He played well as a substitute. He was tidy, progressive, composed, and brought more fluidity to the midfield. He won praise from many fans who noted his calmness under pressure.
But is he the long-term, deep-lying defensive midfielder solution the team desperately needs to fill that hole?
And that's the crux of the debate, isn't it? Some fans feel he should play further forward, perhaps as an 8 or even a 10, where his calmness and dribbling are assets in the attacking third, rather than being burdened with the thankless defensive anchor role.
Right.
His performance today highlighted his technical quality, but the team's defensive structure remains fundamentally unsound when he is the anchor, or when he is paired with his structurally ill-suited partner like Bruno Fernandes. That pairing just leaves the midfield exposed and easily run through by any organized opponent.
So, what we learned today through the sheer spectacle of a 4-4 draw is a story of incredible attacking potential scoring 4 goals, generating a colossal 3.29 xG, showing fight and flair, but all of it fundamentally undermined by an utterly untenable defensive foundation.
And that weakness is compounded by the immediate injuries, the upcoming loss of Casemiro through suspension, and the January AFCON departures. It's a paradox of progress and decay.
How do you mean?
They look like a team capable of beating anyone on their day, but also capable of conceding 3 or 4 goals to anyone on their worst night. The offensive improvement is evident, but the defensive structure, particularly the lack of midfield shield and the youth in the back line, is a critical issue that threatens to derail their entire season.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you, the listener. Given that United's next game is a difficult away trip to high-flying Aston Villa, who sit third in the table without their key defensive shield Casemiro, and soon missing key attackers Mbeumo and Ahmad, is this 4-4 result a sign of necessary chaos on the path to progress, where the players gain confidence from scoring freely and the gaffer learns which attacking combinations work?
Or is it simply confirmation that their current defensive foundation is untenable and will lead to an inevitable slide down the aggressively competitive league table in the coming weeks?
Something to chew on as the festive fixtures approach their most demanding stage.
It truly is a moment of reckoning for the club. We'll be back next time to deep dive into whatever chaos the Premier League decides to throw at us next.
Until then, keep digging, keep learning, and try not to lose too many brain cells watching the football. Goodbye for now.